allow me to thank CCG once again for convening this forum and these panels today alongside of the CIFDIS events. These opportunities for international business community to voice our concerns and share our views on these important topics candidly are few and far between these days. And so CCG does act as a very important platform for connection and communication. And so thank you again for inviting the Canada-China Business Council to both support and to contribute to the dialogue. Today's topic is one that I think that so many of my esteemed co-panelists will have more insight to add than myself. But so I'll keep this brief, and I will try to just make three kind of key points that I hope might act as takeaways for you today from us at the CCB. So we in Canada, very much like China, have a long history of innovation, likely as a result of the harsh environment that we find ourselves in for so many months of the year across much of our geography. In energy, such as nuclear and hydroelectric, alongside our significant investments in renewables, we actually have a rich background in collaborating with China. Companies like the CANDU nuclear reactors and Canadian Solar are great examples of Canadian innovation in clean tech and in energy. Furthermore, in sectors like agri-tech, telecommunications, and transportation, a standout in the Canada cooperation, or Canada-China cooperation, I should say, in this field is the Bombardier Railway Unit that built out a lot of the early high-speed railway across China, and the subway track in many of the cities, and the car technology that we have today across actually dozens of cities in China. Now, Canadian companies like Nortel and BlackBerry that you may have heard of have tremendous background in China as well. Now, while the fortunes of both of those companies have faded, they learned the hard way that investment in continuous innovation is just as important as initial seed stage ideas. Today, our digital and e-commerce firms are leading the way in China with companies like Shopify and Applyboard, a couple of unicorns, as well as even SMEs like Whippic Marketing and Technologies are expanding rapidly into the market and regionally across APAC through China as a base. So these unicorn firms are actually all blossoming. They're gaining a global footprint and, despite seeing a never before seen level of international competition. So why am I telling you about these Canadian companies and not talking about digital innovation? Because in fact, all three of these stories have what we in Canada would say are three key things in common that actually set them up for success. And so I'm going to kind of hark on a little bit of the lessons learned and the best practices here that we've kind of come to learn in some ways in the hard way in Canada. So number one, regulatory environment. These companies all thrived in Canada's safe environment for innovation that allowed for growth and of research and development, fostered intellectual property rights through our transparent, rule of law-based legal system, and could develop technology without threat of politically motivated crackdowns. When there was infringement on their property or on their technology, there was a robust legal practice with top global firms ready to represent companies' interests in our open courts. Number two, investment from government and private sector. All of these business stories that I mentioned earlier started from an idea, and the Canadian investment market spurred the move from 0 to 1, as they say. The Toronto Stock Exchange provides clear rules for listing and even has a venture board for new initiatives called the Toronto Stock Exchange Venture. Canada's provinces and the federal government provide bridge loans and financing, and Canada's export bank, called Export Development Canada, or EDC, would underwrite those commercial loans and offer trade finance tools like letters of credit for early stage deals that allowed these companies to go global and find a foothold in China later in their stories. So, number one, regulatory environment. Number two, investment from both government and private sector. And number three, education. Canada's top-ranked schools and universities provided the soil for the seeds to grow as both state-funded and globally competitive options. Universities like McGill, Waterloo, University of Toronto, and the University of British Columbia are renowned especially for their incubation programs for early-stage open technology startups, and they can there access consulting, capital, and legal advice, often right on campus. So an open, engaging, and free-thinking post-secondary and postgraduate experience was critical for all of the founders of these companies to find their way to domestic and eventually international success. And a final thought, this doesn't really fall into my three categories, but it occurred to me earlier in the day, and it's something that I think is really important as we As we want to avoid as much deglobalization and decoupling as we possibly can, in digital, I think it's really important that we concentrate on standards. More and more Canadian firms operating in China are talking about 2 standards and 2 internets, 2 systems. This is going to do us a great disservice in the future. It's going to make it more and more challenging to integrate, to interact, to do business. And we think that global standards are always the way to proceed, and there are many examples where that has proven to be the case. So, again, I would argue that it's critical for global cooperation, and I think that those international standards in digital and in data are going to become more and more relevant for both Chinese and global companies. So, with that, I will wrap up, and I will pass the mic to my esteemed co-panelists, who I'm sure have a lot to contribute, much more so than I. And thank you again to Mabel and to Henry and to the CCG for providing us this platform and this forum today. So thank you again. 非常感谢.